Hey everybody, welcome to Example of Play. In this video, we're going to continue learning to play EU5, and we're going to focus on this video on war and how to get a Casus Belli, how to build up your military, and how to go win a war and also conclude it. Zooming out here, there's actually a massive war going on that we're part of. The first Papal Bohemian War that got kind of pulled into, which seems to be involving most of Europe. It's kind of crazy. Like you can see all the red outlines and the green outlines that everyone everywhere is fighting each other. But over in our little corner of the world, we're just going to pick a fight with one of our smaller neighbors to demonstrate all the different aspects of a war. Not going into too much depth on like the actual combat, because this is still early game where we just basically have levies and access to some very basic units. So I'm not going to dive into that too much more of just looking at the overall concepts for conducting a war. So let's jump to it. So our first step, if we want to declare war on somebody, is simple enough. We need to pick who we want to pick a fight with and why we're going to fight with them. And that's going to drive our war goals and what we can get out of the war when we sue for peace at the end. And so this game does limit you from just willy-nilly fighting everyone around you, because there's a lot of factors that go into declaring a war, because just like real life, just because you're the ruler of the country doesn't mean you can just declare war out of the blue on someone for no reason. It might cause some upsettedness out there. So if we right click on our target, which we are going to target awfully because they are right in the middle of our nation, causing this big ugly gray spot there where it should all be our color. And look, making our name be all janky on the screen. We don't like that. So we could target Leinster here. There are only two locations. They're close to the capital, which, thinking about the early game here, control is a big factor. If we take somewhere over, we can't exert any control over it. Doesn't do us much good. So that's why, like, even though Munster and Connacht are much larger, not really interested in taking them right away, because we wouldn't be able to do much with that territory anyway. And if we take this, it's still close to the capital and the tax base there is higher. So that's kind of driving my decision making here. Just the order of, we want to conquer all of Ireland, but just kind of the order of which places to take makes sense to go here next. So if we right click, we could, there is declare war from right here, but we'll do open all diplomatic options first. And then under hostile actions, there's several things that you could do, but we're just going to be looking at declare war or create Casus Belli. Now, if we look at declare war first, this gives us a little summary. We're stronger than them. We already knew that. But we can see our military can support up to over 6,000 troops. Theirs can support 332. So pretty much foregone conclusion, we can win this war. But we still can't just declare war on them willy-nilly. Actually, we have to select a war goal first. And then our options here, we have to select our Casus Belli, our cause for war. But we don't have one right now. We don't have any reason really to fight a war with them. We could just declare war for no reason, but that's going to come at a pretty big cost. It's going to cost you 62 stability. It's going to cost, and this will all vary depending on your situation, but in this case, it costs 62 stability. This is our war exhaustion, which is shown up here, which ours is not, ours is fine right now because we haven't been in any long drug out wars for a while. So it's really at 0. But if you had been in a lot of wars, that could pump that up some. And then also it's going to cost us antagonism. So antagonism is kind of a score of how aggressive you are, and makes all your neighbors around you, makes really everyone not like you to some degree, but especially the nations right around you. So doing that, attacking your neighbors, makes your other neighbors not like you, which makes sense. So if we wanted to try to do that, actually we can't even do it because we are a dominion under England. So in our case, we can't just willy-nilly declare war for no reason, which is interesting. But if we wanted to create a Casus Belli, we can see there's a couple options. Since they're an excommunicated ruler, we can do that one. We can show superiority, though, as our war goal. Basically, we're just going to win against them. Or this one, make tributary, which it says if we take their province, we can take their capital, we can make them a tributary, which when I look at this, it says tributary is like, go through all these tooltips, a country that's forced to pay periodic tribute to their overlord. But I've done this war goal a couple times in this game just to try it out, and it seemed like really it's like a one-time payment is all I could get out of it, not the recurring payments. But as you can even see in here, that if they become a tributary, you can't annex them, which doesn't really do us much good since we want to do that in the long run. So these options don't do much for us, and we can't even select them because over here, to select them, we need to have set up a spy network in that country and have a 20 points of spy network there, which we don't have. And in that case, their ruler is not excommunicated anyway, so it wouldn't even work. So you have to check all these requirements for what you can do. Now, if you select other countries, you might have other options, but these are just examples. In our case, we have a special thing we can do, which we looked at last time. As the Lordship of Ireland, we can take a special action here. We can spend a chunk of legitimacy and religious influence to acquire Casus Belli, a subjugation that captures Casus Belli against basically all of our neighbors here on Ireland. And so we can actually just select that. We can pay this cost. And I think you can only do this like every 10 years. So it's not a decision to take lightly, but a very useful one. And in the long run, we could use it against all our neighbors, but in this case, we'll use it against Awfully here. Simple enough. We'll just click on it. And now this is a really powerful thing because it immediately gives us the subjugation Casus Belli for 5 years. And it'll pop up here and say, hey, you can take this action if you want to. And now, if we open it back up, they declare war. Now we have this option of subjugation, which it is still going to have this base cost of 39 stability because they are a co-belligerent. So they're... Yeah, so it'll give you reasons of that cost. So that is still a pretty big stability cost in our case here to declare this war. But once we do it, we should be able to subjugate them and make them underneath us, which would be great. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do that, and then we can say declare war. And now we have started a new war against them with a big hit to our stability, but advancing our long-term goals. So now let's look at raising our levies and going to war. Oh, and actually I should say before that, if say we did want to use one of those other actions and set up a spy network, that's kind of a multi-step process, but it's not that complicated, so we'll just go over it real quick. So that is underneath our, if say we wanted to start that on Leinster while we're fighting this other war, you would open up your diplomatic actions, go to covert actions, and then you would do build spy network. So actually we can't do that because Leinster are a subject of England. I think England conquered them at some point in this game. And so that's kind of annoying. Took this little 2-location country and put them under England, which we'll have to figure that out later. But anyway, let's say if we wanted to do it against Munster instead, we'll open that up. Okay, we could build a spy network, which basically you do that, and then it's sort of just like an action, like improving the opinion of another nation with you. It costs a diplomat, and then it's going to cost some diplomatic points over time. It's going to limit like how much diplomats you're gaining per month, because they're sort of like you're committing part of your diplomatic power to building the spy network, which will just build up slowly over time, and then it'll track over here. And then you'll see all these options here that have the little spy guy here cost this much. Like you need this much of a spy network in the country to take these actions. So there's several covert actions you can take, and as you play the game, more will unlock. And so some of these we don't really care about right now, but at some later points in the game where you maybe don't want to go directly to war with someone, you might want to do these things to undermine them before you fight the war. But one of the things you can do also outside the covert actions back up here, you can do create Casus Belli, and you need a 20-point spy network to do that. And then that'll let you generate, it'll depend on the country and the current state of your game, but it'll give you some different options for ones you can create, but that still takes time as well. So it'll track over here. So it's a multi-step long process to develop, go to war in that way, and where you have to kind of like build up to it. So that's how you do that. I just wanted to mention it before we go on to the actual war here. All right, so now that we're at war, we'll get a little ticker that'll pop up here. This is the second Pale Awfully War. I fought them before I did the like tributary action, make them pay me some money. Now we're going to war again, but we're going to try to subjugate them. If you click on that, you get this screen here where you can see who's the primary for each side of the conflict and then all the other people involved. So I'm the primary, and then I have my two remaining vassals out of the 7 I started with, that I haven't absorbed yet, are helping me out with their tiny little armies, and then hopefully is all by themselves. And then you kind of get a summary of what you know about them, and then how the war's going up here. And then if you wanted to sue for peace, this is the big button to sue for peace, but we're not going to do that just yet because we want to go do some conquering. And then we'll talk about how war goal, your war score here starts at 0. And as you win, as you take territory, these numbers gonna tick up and down. And so we want to build up a bunch of war score so that then we can basically spend the points that we build up to sue for peace. And then the options we take there cost so many war score points. So basically the higher score, the more you can demand from your enemy, up to just winning the whole thing and getting everything you want. Now to fight, of course, we need an army. So whenever you start a war, we were already in one, so we could have already done it, but you'll get this thing popping up letting you know you have unraised levies. So in the early game, levies are going to be the primary, by far biggest part of your army. And depending on what your nation is, you may not even be able to build regular troops for a long time. If you're like England or France, then yes, you'll probably have a standing army. But if you're any of the normal smaller nations, you can't really afford that at the beginning of the game. And then, of course, as you go on in the game, you're going to get way more options for regular military, and you will want to have a standing army. And it can be made up of all kinds of units, but we're going to keep it simple today. Now, if we click on that button, we can come to this screen where we can raise our levies, which I think there's like a little graphical bug. Sometimes the territories don't all turn green like they're supposed to right away. And we can see we can also raise naval levies, but of course in this case we won't need them since we're fighting a landlocked battle. And then if you come here, you can see, all right, this is all the locations where you can raise levies from. And we see by far Dublin is where we can raise the most. We probably don't even need any of these other ones. But then you can just click, you can raise all of them. Click in here, we can raise 6,000 levies, which is quite a few. But we'll just raise the ones here in Dublin, and then you just click on it. Then everywhere that's green, you could raise one, and you can click anywhere else if, say, you just want to do some local areas because the troops are gonna have to travel from wherever they start to join your force. You do that, and then you'll see over here it takes 2 weeks for the levy to be raised, and then those forces will be ready and available. Now, let's say we did want to raise some regular troops. So how would we do that? Well, depending on where you start at, like in this game I started with, I actually couldn't raise any because we didn't have any manpower to do it with. So we'll look at it real quick, but we won't need them for this war. If you come to your military tab, you'll see here how many regulars you could have. Also, there's mercenaries. Mercenaries I haven't got into yet. Don't have the money for that, so we'll leave that for in the future maybe. But recruiting regulars. Now, you can only raise levies during a war, or if you do raise them outside of war, you get lots of negative penalties because they're like, why do you have levies raised? Because that's like your regular people that you're raising to go fight, which comes with the penalties to productivity for wherever they come from. Because basically these are like regular people being pulled to go to war. Regulars are you're like a standing army, like trained professional soldiers. Now, if you can recruit regulars, you can come here and see these are the types of troops you can raise. Again, not going to try to go into the details of like army composition or anything. We'll just keep it simple. Look at our footmen here. And we see, okay, we can raise 100 footmen. It's going to cost for us right now 38 gold, which you do need like weapons and leather and tools. So if you have access to that stuff, it can, in this case, it's making it a little cheaper. But then you would just click here to build those, but they cost money. And then they're going to cost maintenance. One of the big differences, the levies don't really cost you any maintenance. They just cost you productivity. Where the footmen, you got to pay maintenance on them because these are like professional soldiers that you're maintaining. But the benefit is they're a lot stronger than your levies are, and they can gain experience over their time. So if you have a standing army, you can have it drill, you can have it practice, and they can have a general in charge of it. One of your characters, they can get more experience and stronger over time. And if we look at the stats for one of our levies, we can see that... Sorry, got off track here just a little bit. I was kind of studying this, trying to see where the strength is in the levy. So if we look at like the kerns, which for us is kind of our standard infantry, you'll see their stats in here. And I was kind of studying this, trying to understand exactly the differences. But the big thing is that even if their combat stats are roughly similar in like their combat power, Down here, we see levy combat efficiency versus regulars is 5%. So versus 1,000 regulars, they're not performing very well at all. 1-to-1, they're at 5% efficiency. So if you had an army of 1,000 regulars, they could go to town on a lot of levies, but they would cost a lot. And so that's kind of the big difference right there is your regular soldiers are way, way, way more efficient. They're just going to fight way better, but they come at that cost. So if you wanted to raise some regulars, though, you're going to need some manpower for it. And you'll see that up here, which since I just raised those, it was at like 100 and something. We've sent some of those guys to go be in that unit. But to get this manpower, it's only going up +5 per month. So we can only support up to 303 kind of available soldiers, like professional soldier manpower to build those units. We also see we have sailors here. So if we wanted to build ships for our Navy, it pulls from that. The sailors come from, I believe, having like the docks and wharves and stuff. Certain buildings generate sailors. So basically, the more coastline you have, the more buildings related to that, you're going to have more sailors. But to get the manpower, you need a specific building. In the later game, there's more things, but in the early game, there's basically one building you need, and that is the sergeantry, which you can only build in one place, and that's in your capital. So, and I built one. We didn't start with one, but I built it, and so it's a special building here. So it's in the military tab. Not terribly expensive, but it's the key to getting that manpower because it's going to generate that +5 monthly manpower, and it lets you recruit these regular regiments. So without this, you can't have a regular standing army. You need this building. It also gives you a little local crown power bonus to the capital, which is nice. But you can see it's not like terribly expensive. It's just a necessary key step to building a professional army. So you need that building first. Then once you have that, you get manpower, then you can build the unit. All right, so now I'll unpause. We're going to raise our levies and then go off to war. This will probably be a pretty uneventful war, so we'll skip to the end and focus on how to sue for peace. So we'll just let them, I'm going to take it by real quick till they're built. And then see our regular footmen are going to take a little longer, but we actually don't really even need them for this battle. Now we can see these guys will pop up on our map, and you'll see the numbers there, and then also you can see like how much food capacity they have, but we're not going too far from home, so we're not too worried about that. One handy thing is you can select all of them and see, okay, we have 3 separate armies that we raised in different locations. You can actually just click this button, merge to strongest, and they'll just automatically go join the strongest unit together into one big army, which you might want to have them do this, you know, depending on the situation, not just travel depending on what direction you want to travel in, but it's handy just to hit that button and have them all join. Now we see over here we have a ton of information. I'm not going to get all the way into it since this war is going to be pretty straightforward, but you have all kinds of actions here. Some aren't available until you get further in the game or have different types of units. And then up here, basically your units are going to split into like center, left, and right flanks. And you get into lots of details here, but again, we'll skip on the nitty-gritty since we're going to win this war any battles we fight. We can see the enemy army is here. They're red, we're green, we're blue, we're green, and then allies are blue. But we'll just select them. We do want to give them a general, so we can just click here, pick probably our character available with the highest military score, and might also have other perks that are military related. But sure, we'll stick that guy in. Now he's our general, and then we see pretty good 4.5 stars, so he is going to be a strong leader for us. And then we'll just right click to send them off to go fight. Pretty straightforward. And if our footmen, so our 100 footmen, will join them to the main force to amplify them, but it's just 100 guys adding on to almost 4,000, so we don't really need them, but it'll be nice to get them out in the field. Okay, and then we won that battle so fast. Some of the times these battles can take several days. They'll play out for a long time the bigger they are, but we won this battle so fast we couldn't even open it up to look at it. But we can see here, all right, we gained 5.58 war score, so just winning that one battle bumped us up. So now if we open this, we're taking the lead a bit. And having conquered that, we can now, having defeated their entire army, the entire military, we can just start conquering their provinces. Looks like they're trying to raise some more levies, but they're not going to be able to stop us. Now, whenever we park on this location, we can see we're occupying it, which takes like a couple weeks, but is usually like nothing can stop you really from doing it. It just takes some time. And then whenever we get to the capital, probably we'll run into a siege. We'll see if that comes up. In that case, then that's a little more complex, but still be pretty straightforward for us. Now, once we've captured that, we see, okay, this location has the stripes in our color showing that we've occupied that location. And then we got a little decision here. I'll go with that. Trying to not give any more power to the various estates right now. Trying to consolidate in the centralized government. So, all right, I'll skip ahead a little bit since this is pretty uneventful on this part. All right, now we've skipped to the end. They actually didn't have any fortifications at all, so we didn't have to do any big sieges. So we've conquered, we've occupied all their territory, we have defeated their army, and now our war score is at 100%, so we can take whatever we want pretty much. So we click the button here, and now on this screen, making peace with them. It might not always be so one-sided. You might only be able to get a few things. You might want to just get out of a war. You might want to give up some things. And basically, it's a question of this difference of the war score versus how much the terms are, and each of these terms is weighted a certain amount of score. But in our case, since it's at 100%, basically we can take everything we want. Now, if you look through here, depending on your situation, you'll have different options here. But ours are kind of limited in this case. But we could do things like just make them pay us money, make them give us military access or food access, or other things. We could just humiliate them if we wanted to. We can gain prestige that way. Like if we just wanted to beat up on our neighbor and show off. We could force them to execute their ruler depending on certain situations, but we don't have that option here. So quite a few things. But in our case, straightforward, we're going to conquer their land. And so here, these are the provinces. And if you hold over it, you actually can see their locations are split between a bunch of different provinces, but you can also see the individual locations. And you can just click on these, like which ones you want, and then they'll change over there. Or you can click on right there just to get all of them in that category. And these would all cost different amounts. So say if this was a harder war where we'd only conquered part of their country and maybe we only wanted to take one piece of territory, we could just pick one, because each of these that we take costs war score, but it's also going to add antagonism. So the thing of our neighbors are going to be not liking us because we're being really aggressive and taking territory. So maybe we don't want to upset all of our other neighbors too much, and we just take one or two choice provinces, choice locations. But in this case, we're going to take the whole country. So we'll do all of that, and they'll say, okay, we're going to seize all this land, and they're going to accept because they have to. They can't not accept because we've completely won this war. So straightforward enough. We'll just click that and say, all right, we've made peace, and we've taken their country. They've accepted our generous offer. I like when it says that. So now we've done that, and then they become part of our country, settling some other wars somewhere else. Oh, and then I like that. Now our name is Tail in big letters right there. And of course, that is the main reason to go to war, is to make the map look pretty. Just kidding. There's other reasons as well, but that's a big one. So now we've fought this war, we've done what we wanted to. We don't necessarily need this army to still be in the field. Technically, we're still in this larger war, but I'm not going to send my guys off to fight in that, because that's just a big European mess over there, which we're not interested in losing our army fighting that if we don't have to. So we're going to be a little selfish and not worry about it. So we can select this unit, and we can come right here to disband them. But remember, we built that unit of regulars. We don't want to disband them. We kind of want to have them standing for now, just to show off how great we are. The only nation in Ireland with a standing army, however small it is. So you can see here, if you left click, you'll disband the whole unit, but you can right click to only disband the levies, which is pretty nice. So we'll just right click, and then our levies will just go home, which so in this game we don't have to worry about like moving them all the way back home before we do this or anything. We can just say we'll disband them, they'll go back home, and those people will return to where they started location, and then like that location will go back to normal productivity because all the men that went off to fight have come back. And you actually, if you watch down here, you'll get like a little message saying that they made it back home. And so it takes a little time for them to actually get there. But we still have our 100 guys here, which we'll keep them for now. But just quickly looking here, we can see, so now we do have some army maintenance here, which before we did not. But now that we have a standing army, even though it's just 100 guys, it cost us 0.29 gold a month just to have those guys. But they are going to be really strong, and just that's kind of a prestige thing for us right now to have those guys. Now, just talking strategy-wise, we've won the war. We've taken this territory. Looking at here, control. So this will show 100 control because that's where their capital was, but that's going to fade over time. That's from their control that they had. So if we actually click on that, we'll see that our effective current control is 100%, but our maximum control is at 0 because they're unhappy. So we'll need to build that back up over time. And then our like road network, we don't have any roads. They didn't have any roads, so we'll eventually want to build some roads into there. So that'll be a new infrastructure project for us, but it's close to our capital, so we should be able to get a decent amount there. I noticed like all my 7s are all messed up right now. I think maybe it's because there's been several patches over the last week. So maybe that's something for that reason there. That's why those guys are kind of blurred, messed up. So one thing we could do, instead of just having these provinces that are angry at us and unproductive, if say we had 0 control, like up here, and we're not really getting anything out of this location other than having angry people live there, we can come to diplomacy, and we can come down here to create subjects, and you can see you can create custom subjects or historical. But if we say historical, we can now see, oh, we can create the Uaf, whatever, of Awfully. So we could release them as a vassal, and then that might be an option. And you might want to do that with a lot of the territory you conquer. Like if we started the game, we had 7 vassals, and so we were kind of over pushing our limit on our diplomatic capacity. But now I've absorbed most of them, and that capacity is at 0.5 of 4.43. So we could stand to gain some vassals if we wanted to by creating new subjects this way. And then custom subjects, I guess you can set up exactly what you want there. But historical would be like the nations that you conquer, you could then release them as a vassal. The advantages to that is that you get money from them because they will have control over their territory because they'll have their own capital, which will have 100% control. And then there'll be a small nation here will actually be productive versus like if we released up here these guys back as a vassal, whichever one was up here, they would actually be productive and pay us taxes as our vassal, where right now we're not getting anything out of that. So that's kind of a question. You could trade off direct control for getting some money, and then later you could annex them peacefully back into your nation once you're ready to do that. We can't do it right now because technically we're still in this other war that's going on, the Papal Bohemian War. So we're kind of stuck. We're stuck in like European Civil War till that's over. Before we can take that action. But that would be something that is pretty effective, especially early game where you're limited on expanding your control to the far-flung areas, is instead conquer them, then make them your vassal through that action by creating a new state from the state that you just conquered. So okay, I think that covered everything I wanted to for this video. Didn't want it to get drag out any longer than it has to. Yeah, so now we've kind of conquered some more territory. A little more of Ireland is ours. We can then just keep snatching these guys up because at this point, no one's strong enough to oppose us. So the next bit of the game, we want to play forward some more and just do basically rinse and repeat that action until we own all of Ireland as the Pale. And then we'll look at what do we do after we've done that and try to consolidate the island into one nation that is Ireland and not a dominion of England, which is definitely the long-term goal. But thanks for watching. Be sure to hit like, subscribe if you want to see how the story ends here. And then also I will try to jump into a few more things. I think we've hit a lot of the big things, especially for early game, but of course there's more and more to learn. There's whole screens I haven't used yet. The geopolitics tab here has like where you do exploring, where you do colonizing, which we're probably still a long way from doing that. But maybe the game will go on long enough. We'll check that out, see if, I don't know, maybe we can go find Greenland and try to colonize it or something. That might be a long-term goal. But we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.